Shattered glass. The New York rain fell in sheets against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Dominic Blackwood's penthouse office, 68 floors above Manhattan. His reflection stared back at him, expensive charcoal suit, perfectly trimmed dark hair with touches of silver at the temples, and eyes that matched the stormy gray outside. At 38, Dominic had everything money could buy. Blackwood Enterprises dominated the luxury hotel industry across 3 continents. His net worth had just crossed $8 billion, and Forbes had named him most eligible bachelor for the 3rd consecutive year. Everything except peace. Everything except her, Mr. Blackwood? His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. The board is waiting in the conference room. Dominic straightened his burgundy tie. Tell them 5 minutes. His gaze fell to the sleek office around him, minimalist furniture in blacks and whites, accented with subtle gold. Everyone praised its elegance. No one knew it had been designed by the woman who still haunted his dreams 4 years ago. Olivia Winters had walked through his doors as a promising young interior designer hired to renovate the Blackwood corporate headquarters. She had arrived with her portfolio and quiet confidence, honey brown eyes that saw past his defenses, and a smile that made him forget quarterly reports and shareholder meetings. I believe spaces should tell stories. Mr. Blackwood, she had said during their first meeting. What story does yours tell? Over the next 6 months, they worked closely together, late nights reviewing concepts, early mornings walking through construction sites. Her vision transformed the cold, sterile building into something warm yet powerful. Something human. And despite every wall he'd built around himself since childhood, despite the mantra his father had drilled into him, sentiment is the enemy of success, Dominic found himself falling for her gentle laugh, falling for the way she hummed Beatles songs while sketching, falling for how she brought him coffee exactly as he liked it, black with 1 sugar without being asked. One night, after finalizing the designs for his private office, they had shared a bottle of champagne. Snow fell outside, casting the room in a soft glow. You've never told me, Olivia said, her voice slightly warm from the champagne. Why someone who builds beautiful hotels lives in such an empty home. Her question had pierced him. No one had ever dared to ask about the immaculate but soulless penthouse where he spent his few non-working hours. I don't need much, he had answered. Everyone needs something that feels like home. Dominic. It was the first time she'd used his first name. Later, he couldn't remember who moved first, only that suddenly they were kissing. Her body warm against his, her fingers trailing fire along his jaw. For one night, Dominic Blackwood forgot who he was supposed to be and simply became who he was. With her. Morning brought clarity and terror. When Olivia whispered, I think I'm falling in love with you, he froze. Love was vulnerability. Love was weakness. Love was everything his father had warned would destroy the empire he'd built. This was a mistake, he said, voice cold as winter steel. I don't do relationships, and certainly not with employees. He watched her face crumple, saw the light dim in those eyes that had seen him, truly seen him. But he continued, ruthless even as his heart splintered with each word. You're a talented designer, Olivia. I can recommend you to other firms, but I think it's best if you complete your contract remotely. Because of one night? Her voice was barely audible. Because this is business, he replied. And I never mix business with pleasure. 2 weeks later, she submitted her final designs and resignation letter. The headquarters project won 3 architectural awards. Dominic's assistant handled the ceremonies. Now, 4 years later, standing in the office she had designed, Dominic Blackwood was the king of an empire that felt increasingly hollow. The board meeting awaited another hostile takeover. Another billion added to accounts that couldn't warm his bed at night. His phone buzzed with a calendar notification. Preston Foundation Annual Gala, 8 p.m. A charity event he was required to attend tonight. His PR team insisted it would help soften his cutthroat image after last month's particularly aggressive acquisition. Dominic pocketed his phone and straightened his shoulders. Time to be the man everyone expected. The man his father had created. The man who had let Olivia Winters walk away. What he didn't know was that tonight, Fate would force him to face the consequences of that decision, and the woman whose heart he had shattered like glass. Asterisk. Reflections in Gold. The Preston Foundation Gala transformed the Metropolitan Museum of Art into a wonderland of gilded elegance. Crystal chandeliers cast honeyed light across marble floors while New York's elite mingled in designer formal wear. At the center of it all stood the newly unveiled exhibition, Modern Renaissance, Architecture as Art. Featuring the work of 10 revolutionary designers, Dominic adjusted his bow tie as he entered, nodding mechanically to acquaintances. These events were merely business transactions dressed in tuxedos and champagne. His donation had already been arranged. His appearance scheduled for exactly 90 minutes, long enough to be photographed, not long enough to become trapped in tedious conversation. "Mr. Blackwood, so glad you could make it." Eleanor Preston herself approached, resplendent in emerald silk. "Your contribution will help fund our children's art education programs for the entire year." "Happy to support the cause," he replied with practiced charm. "Your foundation does important work. You must see the exhibition. One designer in particular has created the most extraordinary installation, a hotel lobby concept that's being hailed as revolutionary." Dominic allowed himself to be guided through the crowd. The past 4 years had been difficult for Blackwood Enterprises. A series of data breaches had exposed questionable labor practices in their Asian properties. A promising Dubai development had collapsed amid corruption allegations. His reputation had suffered. The board was restless, and for the first time, Dominic felt his control slipping. "Here we are," Eleanor said, gesturing toward a stunning display. The model was breathtaking, a hotel lobby rendered in miniature, with soaring ceilings and impossibly delicate details. But what struck Dominic was its soul. Somehow, the designer had captured the essence of both grandeur and welcome. It felt like ... home. "It's called Sanctuary," Eleanor explained. "The artist believes luxury spaces should be both impressive and comforting places that make you feel significant yet completely at ease." Dominic's throat tightened. Only one person had ever expressed that exact philosophy to him. "Who designed this?" he asked, already knowing the answer. "Olivia Winters. She's become quite the sensation since founding Winterlight Design Studio. In fact," Eleanor brightened, "there she is now." Dominic turned and the world around him blurred. Olivia stood across the room, laughing with a small group. 4 years had transformed her from promising talent to assured professional. Her chestnut hair fell in loose waves to her shoulders, and her burgundy gown accentuated curves he had tried desperately to forget. But it was her confidence that struck him most. She held herself with the certainty of someone who knew her worth, and then Dominic noticed the man beside her, tall with kind eyes and an easy smile. His hand rested comfortably on the small of Olivia's back, a casual intimacy that sent a spike of jealousy through Dominic's chest. "That's Dr. James Fletcher with her," Eleanor said, noticing Dominic's stare. "Brilliant pediatric surgeon. They met when she designed the children's wing at Memorial Hospital. Quite the power couple. He saves children's lives. She creates spaces that heal the spirit." Dominic barely heard her words. His focus narrowed to the diamond ring glittering on Olivia's left hand. "When is the wedding?" he asked, his voice unnaturally tight. "Spring, I believe." "Now, let me introduce you to the museum director." "Excuse me," Dominic interrupted. "I need a moment." He retreated to a quiet alcove, loosening his bow tie as unfamiliar panic clawed at his chest. Engaged. Olivia was engaged to a doctor who saved children. A man who probably came home every night and told her about the lives he'd changed instead of the companies he'd crushed. Dominic pulled out his phone, fingers moving before his mind could catch up. "Harrison, I need information on Dr. James Fletcher at Memorial Hospital. Everything: background, finances, reputation. And get me the client list for Winterlight Design Studio." He ended the call just as her laughter floated toward him. Olivia and her fiancé had moved closer, now speaking with the museum curator about her installation. "The concept explores the idea that true luxury isn't about exclusion, but about creating spaces where everyone feels valued," she explained. Her voice still carrying that gentle passion he remembered. James smiled proudly beside her. "She's being modest." The children's ward she designed has actually shown improved recovery rates. The environment affects healing, something we doctors sometimes forget. You two are making the rest of us look bad, the curator joked. Their easy rapport was nauseating. Dominic took a slow breath and stepped forward. Miss Winters, congratulations on the exhibition. Olivia turned and he watched as recognition washed over her face. For just a moment, he saw the flicker of old pain, quickly masked by professional composure. Mr. Blackwood, thank you. Her voice was perfectly controlled. It's been some time. Nearly 4 years, he replied, eyes holding hers. Your work continues to impress. James extended his hand. James Fletcher. I don't believe we've met. Dominic shook it firmly, perhaps too firmly. Dominic Blackwood. I had the pleasure of working with Olivia when she was just starting her career. Of course. You're the hotel magnate. James smiled genuinely. Olivia designed your headquarters, right? The one that won all those awards? She did. Her talent was evident from the beginning. Dominic's gaze never left Olivia's face. Some decisions in business I've come to regret? The subtle tightening around Olivia's eyes told him she understood his meaning. Life moves forward, she said simply. If you'll excuse us, we should greet the other guests. As they moved away, Dominic caught James's question. Was he difficult to work with? You never talk much about that project. Olivia's response drifted back. Some experiences are better left in the past. For the next hour, Dominic watched them from a distance. How she touched James's arm when laughing. How he anticipated her needs before she voiced them, appearing with water when she'd been speaking too long. The natural rhythm between them spoke of deep compatibility. They're quite wonderful together, aren't they? Eleanor Preston had returned to his side. She deserves happiness, Dominic replied automatically. Eleanor studied him curiously. Did you know Ms. Winters well? We had a professional relationship. The lie tasted bitter. Her exhibition is remarkable. I'd like to commission her firm for my new Chicago property. That would be quite the coup for both of you. Though I hear Winterlight has a 6-month waiting list now. Dominic smiled thinly. I'm not accustomed to waiting. As the evening concluded, he watched Olivia and James depart, his hand guiding her through the crowd with gentle protection. Once, those hands had been his. Once, those smiles had been for him. In the back of his limousine, Dominic stared at the city lights blurring in the rain. For the first time since building his empire, he felt truly poor. Where to, sir? His driver asked. Dominic leaned forward. Take me to the office. And call the executive team. I want to accelerate the Chicago project, and I want Winterlight Design Studio on board. Whatever it takes. The skyline of Manhattan gleamed like fool's gold as his car disappeared into the night. A man accustomed to taking what he wanted now, determined to reclaim what he had foolishly thrown away. Desperate measure. The following weeks became an exercise in Dominic's considerable power and influence. Within days, Winterlight Design Studio received an offer that would make headlines across the industry, complete creative control and double their standard fee to design the interior of Blackwood's new Chicago flagship hotel. It's an impossible offer to refuse professionally, Regina, Olivia's business partner, argued during their Monday morning meeting. This could put us in a completely different league. Olivia stared at the contract on her tablet, her expression unreadable. It's also Dominic Blackwood. He's notoriously controlling creative freedom on paper, rarely translates to reality with him. The contract explicitly guarantees final design approval remains with us, Regina countered. And frankly, we need this after losing the Singapore project. 20 employees depend on us maintaining a certain project flow. After hours of discussion, Olivia reluctantly agreed with one condition: she would oversee the project remotely, sending her associate director for in-person meetings. That arrangement lasted exactly 1 week. Mr. Blackwood is insisting on meeting the principal designer directly, her assistant informed her. He's actually in our reception area right now. Olivia's hand stilled on her keyboard. She took a steadying breath before walking into the reception area of the converted warehouse that housed her studio. Dominic stood examining the design awards displayed on the exposed brick wall. He'd chosen to wear a casual blazer over a simple shirt, no tie, no armor of formality. "This is unexpected," she said coolly. He turned, those stormy eyes focusing on her with unsettling intensity. "I was in the neighborhood." "My office is in Brooklyn." "Your corporate headquarters is in Midtown Manhattan." A slight smile touched his lips. "It's a big neighborhood." In her glass-walled office, Dominic declined coffee and came directly to the point. "Your team's initial concepts aren't working for me." Olivia's professional pride flared. "Those concepts perfectly align with your stated objectives. Modern luxury with environmental consciousness. I want something more personal," he interrupted. "Something with soul, soul?" She repeated the word flatly. "That's not exactly a design specification." "I know what I don't want, Olivia." His use of her first name sent an unwelcome shiver down her spine. "I don't want another sterile monument to wealth. I want what you created at the Preston exhibition, a sanctuary." The conversation shifted to technical details, but throughout, Olivia felt Dominic's gaze lingering. Not just on her, but on the photos on her desk, her with James at the beach, laughing into the camera. "You seem happy," he said finally, voice uncharacteristically soft. "I am," she met his eyes directly. "James is a good man, and I wasn't?" Olivia's laugh held no humor. "You were many things, Dominic. Good wasn't one of them." Over the next month, his presence became a disturbing constant. When she sent revised designs, he appeared personally to review them. When she mentioned a difficult supplier during a conference call, that supplier mysteriously became eager to accommodate her every request. When she mentioned offhand that she needed research on boutique hotels in Barcelona, comprehensive portfolios appeared on her desk the next morning. James noticed the change in her first. "You're distracted," he said one night as they prepared dinner in their Brooklyn Heights apartment. "Is it the Blackwood project?" "Just regular work stress," she deflected. Chopping vegetables with unnecessary force, James gently took the knife from her hand. "Liv, you forget I was there when you were putting yourself back together after him." "I recognize the signs." Her eyes filled with tears. "He's just everywhere suddenly. And I keep wondering if I'm imagining things, if I'm seeing meaning where there's only business. Do you want me to talk to him?" She laughed despite herself. "My fiancé confronting the terrifying Dominic Blackwood? He eats cardiac surgeons for breakfast." "I save children for a living," James said with a wink. "I'm practically bulletproof." The moment of levity faded when her phone chimed with a message. "Emergency meeting requested by Blackwood Chicago property facing permit issues 8 a.m. tomorrow." That night, Olivia dreamed of offices high above Manhattan. Champagne and snow falling beyond windows. She woke with James's arm around her, feeling like a traitor for dreams she couldn't control. The weight of the Chicago situation escalated quickly. What Dominic presented as permit issues was actually a targeted campaign by a rival developer to block the Blackwood project through regulatory challenges. Within days, Olivia found herself on a corporate jet to Chicago with Dominic and his legal team. This should be resolved in 48 hours, he assured her as they reviewed documents at 30,000 feet. "Your time won't be wasted." The hotel site stood half-completed, a skeleton of steel and concrete overlooking Lake Michigan. As they toured the structure, Dominic's hand occasionally touched the small of her back, guiding her through construction debris, each touch sending unwanted electricity through her body. "I can see it," he said as they stood on what would become the Grand Terrace. "What you described in the renderings. This could be something extraordinary." For a moment, she glimpsed something she'd never seen before. Dominic Blackwood genuinely passionate about creating something beautiful. Not just profitable. That evening, trapped in Chicago by meetings that ran late, they found themselves alone in the hotel restaurant. 2 glasses of wine into dinner, the conversation shifted dangerously from professional to personal. "Why did you really bring me into this project?" she asked directly. "There are dozens of designers who would kill for this opportunity." Dominic studied his wine before answering. Because I wake up in that penthouse you once called soulless, surrounded by everything money can buy, and feel nothing? His eyes met hers. Because everything I've touched since you left has been hollow. Don't. She shook her head. You don't get to say these things now? When then? After your wedding? His voice hardened. You belonged with me, Olivia. We both knew it. Belonged? Her quiet laugh held years of pain. I was never a possession, Dominic. I was a woman who loved you, who would have given you everything. And you threw it away because love didn't fit your business model? She stood, throwing her napkin down. I have to go. Olivia, wait. But she was already walking away, tears threatening to fall. Outside in the bitter Chicago wind, she called James, needing the anchor of his voice. When it went to voicemail, she remembered he was in surgery, a 12-hour procedure. To save a child's heart, the contrast couldn't have been clearer the next morning. Dominic was professionally distant as they met with city officials. By afternoon, the permit issues were mysteriously resolved. As they prepared to return to New York, a courier arrived with a small package for Olivia. Inside was a framed sketch, her original concept drawing for Dominic's office from 4 years ago. With her handwritten note in the margin, a space that tells your truth, not just your success story. I kept it, Dominic said quietly. It's the only personal item in my office. On the flight home, he finally spoke the words she never expected to hear from Dominic Blackwood. I'm sorry, Olivia. His voice was rough with emotion. I was a coward. I told myself I was protecting the business, but I was protecting myself from feeling anything real. By the time I realized what I'd lost, you were gone. She stared out the window at the clouds below. And now? Now I watch you with a man who deserves you, and I have to live with the consequences of my choices. His laugh was hollow. Quite the lesson in humility for someone who's never lost. When they landed, James was waiting at the private terminal hansom in his hospital scrubs, exhausted from his marathon surgery but still there for her. Dominic watched their reunion from the jet stairs, his face a mask of controlled pain. That night, as James slept beside her, Olivia made a decision. She called Regina and removed herself from the Blackwood Project, *Hearts Reclaimed Spring. Arrived in New York with a riot of cherry blossoms in Central Park, Olivia stood before the mirror in her wedding dress, an elegant sheath of ivory silk that captured light as she moved. Her mother adjusted the simple veil while her best friend dabbed at emotional tears. You look perfect, her mother whispered, but perfection felt strangely hollow. Over the past months, Olivia had thrown herself into wedding preparations, while deliberately avoiding all news of Dominic Blackwood or his Chicago hotel. James had been understanding about her withdrawal from the project, never pressing for details beyond her explanation of too much history. Their relationship had continued, steady and loving as always. Yet something had shifted, a subtle distance neither acknowledged. 2 weeks ago, she had found James sitting alone on their balcony at midnight, staring at medical journals without reading them. Are you happy, Liv? He'd asked, the question hanging in the pre-dawn quiet. She'd hesitated a heartbeat too long before answering. Of course. Now, alone for a moment in the bridal suite. Olivia's phone chimed with a news alert, one she'd set months ago and forgotten to disable. Blackwood Enterprises announces major restructuring. CEO steps down. Her fingers trembled as she opened the article. Dominic had resigned as CEO, appointing his longtime K to the position while remaining on as chairman. The statement cited his desire to focus on the humanitarian side of the business and announced a new foundation dedicated to designing healing spaces in children's hospitals worldwide. The final paragraph mentioned that the nearly completed Chicago property would be his last personal project. With a quote from him, "This hotel represents both an ending and a beginning. It stands as a monument to what we lose when we choose fear over love and what we might still create when we finally learn that lesson." Olivia's heart pounded as she read the words clearly meant for her. A knock at the door startled her. James entered, handsome in his tuxedo but breaking all tradition by seeing her before the ceremony. We need to talk, he said simply. They sat together on the small sofa, his hands gentle as they took hers. I love you, Olivia. Enough to know when something isn't right. His eyes were kind but sad. You've been haunted since Chicago. Not just by him, but by questions you thought were answered. Kings, she began. But he shook his head. I became a surgeon because I believe in healing. Not just bodies, but lives. He touched her cheek softly. I don't want either of us walking into a marriage with unresolved hearts. Tears spilled down her cheeks. What are you saying? I'm saying we're postponing. Not for him, but for us to make sure we're choosing each other with complete clarity. He smiled sadly. People will gossip for a week, then move on to the next scandal. We'll survive. Hours later, after tearful explanations to family and friends, Olivia found herself alone in her apartment, still in her wedding dress. On impulse, she ordered a rideshare to an address she'd memorized but never visited. Dominic's penthouse building rose like a silver needle against the darkening sky. The doorman, recognizing her from years before, allowed her up without announcement. She found him on his terrace, overlooking the city lights. He turned, shock registering on his face at her unexpected appearance, especially in a wedding gown. We postponed, she said simply. Not canceled, postponed. He remained frozen, afraid to move. Why? Because I need to know if what I felt for you was real or just unfinished. She stepped closer. Because James deserves someone who comes to him with a whole heart, not one still wondering about what-ifs. And what do you deserve, Olivia? The truth. Her voice strengthened. Show me the Chicago hotel. The one you built as a monument to regret. I need to see if you've actually changed or if this is just another tactic to get what you want. 2 days later, they stood together in the completed lobby of the Sanctuary Chicago. The space was breathtaking, her initial concepts realized with a depth and warmth she hadn't thought Dominic capable of understanding, much less creating. This isn't what I expected, she admitted, moving through spaces that somehow captured everything she believed about design. I followed your vision, he said simply, even after you left the project. The top floor contained a surprise, not the typical penthouse suite, but a light-filled community space for local artists and a children's art therapy program. The Olivia Winters Gallery, read the plaque by the entrance. You named it after me without permission, she observed. Though without anger, not after you. For you. Because you taught me that spaces should tell true stories. His eyes held hers. And this is mine, the story of a man who had everything but understood nothing until he lost someone irreplaceable. In that moment, standing in a building that existed because of both of them, Olivia felt the final pieces shifting into place. I need time, she said finally. Not just days or weeks. Dominic nodded, restraint evident in every line of his body. I've learned patience. 3 months later, Olivia sat across from James in their favorite cafe. Their engagement rings rested between them on the table. I'll always love you, she said, tears tracking down her cheeks. He covered her hand with his. Enough to let you go where you need to be. That same evening, she arrived at Dominic's door, not in a wedding dress this time, but simply as herself. I don't belong to you, she said as he opened the door. I never did, and I never will. I belong to myself. His eyes held a new humility. I know. But I choose to share myself with you if you've truly learned that love isn't possession. It's freedom. Dominic took her hand, leading her not to the bedroom or the living room, but to a door she'd never noticed before. Inside was a light-filled studio space with drawing tables and materials, a designer's dream workspace with views of the city she loved. I built this months ago, he admitted. Not because I expected you to come back, but because I needed to believe in possibility again. Olivia walked to the windows, feeling the potential of the space and of the man who had created it for her. We start slow, she said, turning to face him. We build something real this time. Dominic nodded, keeping a respectful distance. One day at a time. As night fell over Manhattan, they stood together in the space between past and future two people who had lost and found each other. finally understanding that the greatest luxury was not possession, but the freedom to choose love every single day.